We are live. Let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome back to another live and amplified Indie Fusion podcast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we're back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest joining us. We have Liz LABELLE. How's it going?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's Tuesday, you know, not quite midweek yet, but we're getting there.
That weird day, that kind of in-betweens.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, Thursday, it's like it's almost the weekend, but Tuesday, it's like
not quite,
but you know.
But we're making progress. We're making progress through the week.
100%. So, how was your studio session today? You'd mentioned that you had a bit of a grinder out there.
So it was. So I'm working on this project with my friend Feather, and he is. I'm going to say it's like a project that I've never really seen anybody else do. And it's my opportunity to kind of be creative outside of music while it's still being kind of a music adjacent project. He calls it a podcast, but he doesn't really quite know what to call it. It's called The Art of Figuring It Out. And today was more of like a creative, like brainstorming session, but it was like a lot of like back and forth, a lot of coming up with ideas. And my role is I voice an AI robot in this story where Feather, the artist, crash lands on a planet. His ship is totally busted. He's trying to navigate being alone, isolated, blah, 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 all that stuff. And then eventually he's given this AI kernel that sprouts, and here comes Alwyn, the AI bot. So today we were kind of figuring out the next season because I appeared kind of at the tail end of his first season, and it's a really cool project. The second he pitched it to me, I was in. I was all about it. So that was today's session. That was like not music related necessarily, but definitely tickles my creative and my like super geeky side, honestly.
Right. Does it kind of take you back to the Sarcastic Four?
It makes me miss my group so much. I think about them every single time. I really do.
Fair.
Yeah.
I saw that and I was like, oh, cool. She's got an active podcast. And then I went and looked and I was like, oh.
We haven't, it's not quite active. We are still, so one of our members moved away from Nashville. So it kind of makes, we used to record all together, like all of us, and like that we could just live react. There's no latency, no delays and stuff. And now we're figuring out a way to be able to record with Ralph being in South Carolina. And we definitely want to kick this back into gear. And we just honestly started doing this just for fun because we had our group chat going in Instagram. And I was like, imagine if this were a podcast. And then everybody was like, imagine if this were a podcast. And then we imagined and we made it a podcast. Right.
I just birthed another podcast this weekend. Similar situation. I was talking to somebody I don't get to talk to that often. And I had sent them a different, like a film project that I was working on. I was like, hey, if you can, I just want your unbiased opinion because I know you're going to give it to me straight.
Right.
And so that 4-minute critique that I thought was going to happen turned out to be a hour and a half phone call.
Yes.
Because I called them, like, they texted me, was like, hey, sorry, I'm like halfway through it, but call me in like 7 minutes and I'll kind of give you my feedback. Just, it's a little bit easier to tell you over the phone. I'm like, okay, cool. Right. So I was like, I finished what I was doing. I got in my car. I needed to go to the grocery store. The grocery store is about 15 minutes away. So I was like, cool, plenty of time. Right. I ended up sitting out in front of the grocery store for an hour and a half. Luckily, I know everybody that works in the grocery store, so it's not like weird or anything. Right. But it was just kind of like, cool. And then at the end of it, I was like, imagine if this was a podcast.
Right.
And they're like, would you want to do a podcast?
Why not?
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure that one out now.
Yeah.
So,
and that's mainly the premise of the one that I'm working on right now. Basically the art of figuring it out.
Right. Well, the fact that you're like, I love that idea, like a fictional
Hmm.
narrative driven podcast. Cause when I was living out in New Mexico, a buddy of mine had that same similar premise. He would break it off into seasons, and it followed a narrative based
Hmm.
around the Roswell UFO crash.
Heck yeah. I'm gonna
And
ask you
so,
for what that is later because I love anything like alien UFO related. It's
yeah,
just yeah. But anyway,
okay.
keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like that was the first time I had seen like in podcast format like a narrative driven
Hmm.
story, and the fact that you just brought up that that's kind of what you're involved in now. It's like
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that that's trying to be
Yeah.
something, you know?
Because like the podcast in itself is like very conversational. It's just like it's very, you know, you kind of have like here's where we start and we don't really have like a point to lead towards. And with this story, and that's why like there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of discussing, it's a lot of seeing where we want to take the story, how we want to elaborate, what we could bring in, the themes we want to like cycle through it. It was like a like I said, a very lengthy conversation, a lot of notes, a lot of research, and like I to his credit, Feather really did dig deep into the specs, the technicalities, the
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff. So it's really cool. And like I said, like I grew up on I was 4 years old when I painted a little, you know, like when you're done with wrapping paper, the cardboard tube at the end, painted that to look like a lightsaber when I was 4 years old. Like I was in it from a young age. So to be able to be part of something new and
Mm-hmm.
creative like this is just like it's everything I could have dreamt of. And honestly, like voice acting was something that I was really interested in as well.
Mm-hmm.
And not that this is like, you know, the big role or anything, but like just being able to step into a different persona
Mm-hmm.
and have fun with that is something that I didn't realize I would love as much as I do in doing a project like this.
Oh,
So
yeah. Well,
yeah.
and I think as like time moves forward and time becomes more valuable, I think you're going to
Hmm.
start seeing like audio stars and like audio
Yeah.
content to start becoming way more prevalent, because it's one of those things where you can do while you're doing
In the
other
background.
things and not necessarily have to focus. Well, I mean, you have to focus on it, but
Yeah.
it's not like you have to like physically be like,
Reading words.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I like when audiobooks were kind of like a newer thing, I guess, or when they started becoming popular, I didn't quite get it. I was like,
Mhm.
do you not know how to read? Like, like that was very, I was very ignorant about it all. I'm 100% seeing the value of it because, like, you know, everybody has such busy lives. Everybody wants to be super efficient, and you know, being able to like, I listen to this, I listen to Crime Junkie podcast
Mhm. Mhm.
while I lift weights, and it's just like that's my happy time, like hearing
Yeah.
about all these crazy cases, and then I'm staying healthy. So
Oh yeah. When I was
yeah.
first traveling back and forth, when I first moved out to Texas here 5 years ago, I was doing a lot of traveling to Florida to go see my dad, up to
Hmm.
Chicago to see my sister, and I ran across Crime Junkies, and I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, cool. Like I thought it was like some little niche podcast that nobody really listened to, and then I
Right.
start digging into it. I'm like, oh, this is like a real like
Yeah.
everybody knows what this podcast is.
It grew tremendously. I started, you know, from like the more recent ones and started
Mm-hmm.
working my way back. But then one day I was like, you know what? I want to see what this was like when they started. And it definitely has all of that, like just like we'll see where this goes kind of
Mm-hmm.
situation. I think one of them was like a radio personality,
Yeah.
but and then like some like they either worked adjacent to like crime solving
Mm-hmm.
organizations or stuff like that. But I hear it as I'm going, like I'm in like 2022, like when they
Mm-hmm.
posted their content in 2022 and just seeing that, hearing them be amazed at how much it's grown is really cool because like
Yeah.
I started listening to them in 20 like last year 2024
Yeah.
when they were already established. So just like hearing that whimsy and that like pride
Mm-hmm.
in the recordings, it's really cool. But yeah, just like it makes traveling a lot less lonely to have like these things playing in the background because like music's fine and music is great, but sometimes you need to listen to something else. I like to fill my head with like other stuff and
Yeah.
learn. all the
Uh,
time. So yeah.
it's one of those things where I like to try and listen to stuff
Hmm.
that's going to spark creativity
Yeah.
because I know like when I'm driving, that's the only time that like I'm really able to just kind of sit with myself.
Hmm.
And like if I want to try and come up with an idea, I need to kind of like do that while I'm driving
Yeah.
because, you know, so
A lot of song ideas come to me when I'm driving. So I drive back home to Montreal whenever I visit
yes.
my family because I have a dog and she is everything to me and I'm never going to leave her behind. Um, but yeah, those 17-hour drives, like I have notes and notes and notes amassed in my phone from of like ideas that I just come up with because I'm able to have that silence, that like focus, that brain shut off or brain shut on and like not having all this like noise
Mhm.
coming in constantly. It's crazy how this is becoming like a thing that I talk about as often as I am lately. Like it's literally something that I discussed with Feather earlier. So it's I love that we're talking
Right.
about this now.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because it's like you feel like admitting you're doing something dangerous by saying, "Yeah, when I drive, I shut my brain off." Because, like, realistically, it's like, I mean, your body knows exactly what to do, and
Yeah.
unless you're like in a really thick traffic jam, like, it's really not that hard to drive. You know,
Yeah.
you could like just not zone out, but just not have to necessarily think.
Autopilot is definitely a real thing in these
Oh
situations.
yeah. Oh yeah. And it's like I sit there and listen to my dad talk about like Tesla and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, I'd be so dangerous behind it with a Tesla because it's like
It's taking
you
care of everything for me, right?
right? It's like you think I don't think about anything now? Imagine what it'd be like with a Tesla.
You would write a novel behind that
Mhm.
wheel.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Like it was almost dangerous for the 3 months that I had to drive my dad's Highlander because I was
Yeah.
down helping him when my mom was really sick, and he was like, "Yeah, just wherever you need to go, don't take your car," because my car was really beat up at that point.
Hmm.
He's like, "Take the Highlander, you're fine." And it was pretty dang close to a Tesla. Like it had lane assist, it had
Oh my gosh.
collision detection, and so if you set that thing on cruise control, all you had to do was just have your hand right here, and that car was practically driving
Wow.
itself. Yeah,
Insane.
and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, boy, if I had to drive this thing all the time,
You'd pick up some like maybe not so good habits.
right, right. And then I had to go back to driving my car, and my car at that time was dumb. And it's
Hmm.
like, oh man, I've actually got to drive this thing now.
My
So,
unintelligent car.
oh no, yeah. So, oh man. Um, but so you're in Nashville now, but you're
Mhm.
originally from Montreal. How long have you
Montreal.
been um in Nashville, like I guess full time?
I got here late 2017, scouted things out, wanted to figure things out, and then in the last 2 weeks of my like traveler's permit, because I'm allowed to be outside or like on U.S. soil as a tourist for up to 6 months. In those last 2 weeks, I met everybody that I work with for like with the gig life out here. So last in the last 2 weeks is where kind of everything uh, became real, I would say.
Mhm.
And
Nice.
yeah, so like late 2017, but officially like as a a legal working person, late 2018 is when it
Nice.
happened.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I love it. It's always kind of an interesting question because I know how hard it is to kind of do everything legally.
Yeah, it there's a lot of hoops to jump through. Um, and like as difficult as trying to participate in the music industry at a at a professional and serious level,
Mhm.
as difficult as that is to navigate, there are so many resources that are like within arm's reach. I pay for a membership with the musicians union,
Mhm.
and they really do like advocate for fair pay, something a living wage at the very least, and like solid working conditions. Whether those are respected or not is a different story. The organization and company that I work for is great. It's gigs, it's hard work, but it's really cool experiences. But like having those resources accessible was definitely helpful because man, navigating immigration and work permits and knowing what forms to
Yeah.
fill out, what the USCIS needs is like I never would have been able to figure that out on my own with and like thanks to the Federation of Musicians, the Musicians Guild, I send them my paperwork, they fill out the right paperwork and then they submit the work permit application for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that. That's maybe I need to tell some of my friends that are having problems getting through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's you don't have to make it difficult. It's much easier than you think. Like the work permit that I submit for is on a yearly basis, so it
Mm-hmm.
makes things a little. It's a little more tedious. It's hard work on like a higher frequency.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do want to do like say like I do a P2 status. If you want to do an O status, that allows you to be here for 3 to 5 years or however long like the
Mm-hmm.
applications for. Then you have to go through like an immigration lawyer. They do the submission for you. And then they've got the lawyer fees, they've got the work permit fees, and then whatever else, they decide to tack on
Yeah.
is another thing that you need to worry about. Whereas like sure, it's annoying that I have to apply for it every year, but I know that it can be done. And I know that like, I know what I expect to pay for it. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that I'm protected because I have the guild and the Federation of Musicians behind me. So
Right. 100%. It's
mhm.
because I've seen so many people from Canada, from Australia, from the UK,
Yeah.
from, like name any country that are trying to come over to the States and
Mhm.
work. And they just don't know where to begin because they'll come over on like a tourist visa or just come over as a tourist.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I can't really play.
And then that's the thing is like you bend rules there, right? A lot of
Yeah.
I'm sure musicians don't like a lot of these musicians doing it that way don't realize that like if you get caught, that's
Yeah.
it. Like
Mhm.
your chances of coming back are just like that's it.
Yeah.
You're playing a huge like you're making a huge taking a huge chance and it's like a big risk of like forever like
Mhm.
crossing that off your
Right.
list of future destinations. Like that's just it's as simple as that.
Yeah. And that's always my big concern about traveling because I almost made that risk going to Toronto one
Mm-hmm.
year. When I was in college, I was doing a documentary and I was trying to do fundraising for it. And it was about this professional wrestler kid that was, and he had to show up in Toronto. He's like, "Hey man, come up to Toronto with me. I've got a huge fan base up there." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'll bring some T-shirts. We'll sell them, all that stuff." And then luckily, I didn't have the initial money to begin with to like
Mm-hmm.
go up there. And my dad was like, "You're gonna try and sell merch in Canada with
Were
like,
you crossing over with it also?
yeah, yeah, yeah." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, aren't Canada and the U.S. like cool?" Because I just think, and obviously this was a completely different time because this was
Yeah.
like when I was a kid. It was pre 9/11. My dad used to work in Detroit, and we used to go into Canada all the time, like no big deal.
Yeah.
But then you realize that was pre 9/11, and now everything's different. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And like they're well, no, I wouldn't say every year, but every few years, like there's always something new. Like now I know in the US, you have to have like the real ID. So
Hmm.
even traveling within the country, you can't have just like your driver's license or whatever. Like
Hmm.
they're enforcing that now. There's just like travel safety is like changing daily.
Hmm.
Keeping up with it is sometimes a little overwhelming
Hmm.
because you don't necessarily look it up like, hey, what do I need before I go like home to see my family kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, even in like in the last few years, like what I just submitted for my work permit renewal,
Hmm.
um, and they said like, current political climate indicates that blah, blah, blah. So like it's definitely a thing. The tension between you know, your neighbors up
Yeah.
north and the US. Um, so like just knowing you can't really prepare yourself
Mm.
for it. And the only thing that I can have to protect me in this whole situation is like I have contracts I need to
Yeah.
honor
Yeah.
in the US.
Hmm.
I've been here for X amount of years. So like hopefully that's good enough for you. And
And
it's worked, it's helped, but
yeah, I'm guessing you pay taxes and all that stuff as
yeah,
well. Yeah, so it's
yeah,
like everything they have issues with, you're covered. You're
yeah.
good.
No,
Like,
like that's one thing is like if I'm gonna go somewhere else, I'm gonna like respect
right?
what needs to be done because
Mm-hmm.
like it's a privilege.
100%.
It is a privilege to be here, and like I fought hard to be here. So
Mm-hmm. Have you thought about applying for like dual citizenship or?
I have. It's something that I'm working towards. Like right now, the way I'm doing it is compiling like my history as an employee here,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I do go apply for like the green card or or dual citizenship, I'll show them like my work history. You know how I've benefited the country, all that stuff. It's like a whole like sales pitch basically, but you have to build up history and not just be like, hey, I've been here for a couple of years. Like, I think we're good now. It's definitely like it takes a few years
It's like
before you're
applying for a job at this point, right?
exactly.
So,
It's like when you're fresh out of school and you're applying for a job, but you need like 5 years of experience kind
mm-hmm.
of thing.
Right.
So that's yeah. So I'm putting in my time before I ask for that.
For sure. That's cool. I love it. So you've been in Nashville now for quite some time.
For a few years now.
Were you recording music before you came to Nashville, or was that something you started doing when you got to Nashville?
I started before that. I recorded my first EP when I back in 2010, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another one a few years later. I recorded that one in Phoenix, Arizona with this little production team. But that was like from playing shows in town, like opening for, touring acts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the production team that worked on my first full length record, they were in a band that I opened for. We chatted a little bit and they're like, hey, like we're starting a production team. Do you want to come record with us? And I was very familiar with their work. I love their music.
Mm-hmm.
They're incredible songwriters and like they're freaking crushing it now too. Um, so it was a no brainer for me to accept. And it was like, I was super young at that point too. And just like, it was a huge learning experience and just like, bright eyed and not really sure where I was going, but like just really keen on taking everything in. And, I'm super, super proud of that record and I'm happy like with where it took me. And that's kind of how I landed in Nashville was, recorded the album, released it, wanted a means to get it out to people. And, I decided like I would do like the thing where I follow Warped Tour, talk to people in line, and then
Mm-hmm.
like have them listen to my music with like little headphones I had with me, and sold them some copies of my record. And eventually, like I think 2 weeks in, Kevin Lyman, the founder of Warped Tour, was like, "Hey, do you want to play?" And I was like, "Do I want to play?" I thought I was dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I ended up playing Warped Tour a little bit, and from then on, jumped on a couple touring opportunities, kept writing, and then landed in Nashville to meet people that convinced me to stay. So I did.
Nice.
I got informed, learned a lot about being a Canadian, wanting to be in America for a long amount of time, and the rest is history. Been
Right.
here ever since 2017, writing, recording, meeting people, playing a ton of shows.
Nice.
And yeah,
And I bet you're meeting a lot of Canadians there in Nashville.
I am actually. There's a lot more than I thought. I thought I was the only Montrealer here trying to do what I'm doing. But there's a lot of people from Western Canada.
Mm-hmm.
My boyfriend plays for like a fellow Canadian. Um, you have a lot of musicians out here just crushing it that are
Mm-hmm.
from across the border. So it's
Oh
pretty
yeah.
cool.
Nice. Yeah, I was I talked to I've had a lot of Canadians on in general,
Heck
and
yeah.
some of them are in that or like in Nashville now, or they're in the process of like trying to move to Nashville, and it's really cool. Like it's kind of like the UK thing where like
Hmm.
UK was like really starting to come over to Nashville a little bit, but now it's just like I'm starting to see all the Canadians come down, which is really cool as well. So,
I mean, we laugh and we say that Canada's a little like I would say half a year behind the US in terms of trends and
mhm.
like yeah, just like following the hype and following like what's being produced out here.
Hmm.
So, you know, the Chapel Roans and the Sabrina Carpenters are going to be in Canada maybe in like the next 6 months.
Hmm.
Or like country music, the way it's just like it's always been the favored genre in America, in the
Hmm.
US, but in Canada it was always kind of like the
Hmm.
folksier side and not as prevalent. And now we've had Boots and Hearts festival in Ontario for a while, but now in the last 2 or 3 years, I want to say we have Lasso in Montreal, which is our country music festival. It's starting to pick up, so it's
Yeah.
wild to see all these Canadian musicians or like
Yeah.
aspiring artists looking at Nashville and being like, okay, so that's where that's from, and or that's like where the really strong country musicians
Mm.
are all based.
Oh yeah. So in about 6 months to a year, you guys or the Canadians will start getting like this Texas red dirt thing that's coming up.
Probably, I would
Yeah.
say so. Yeah, because they're going to
Sweet.
start exploring. I mean, the amount of like first of all, I advertise that I'm a Canadian from Montreal.
Hmm.
So the amount of people coming up to me and speaking to me in French, but then following it up with, can you play Luke Bryan, is hilarious to me. Because I never really encountered that when I lived in Montreal.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
oh man. So where is Montreal? Does that's more east, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Northeast. It's like right above Vermont.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So it's like oh, what's the islands that's like in the forgotten time zone in North America?
What do you,
The,
I don't know what that,
for,
forgotten time zones.
yeah,
Oh, like the
there's a
Maritimes?
yeah, there's the you got like Pacific Mountain, Central, Eastern, and
Eastern.
then there's the
I thought it was maritime, but
maybe
that might
maybe it
that
is.
that might be just be like,
We're
because I know there's a time zone that's like half an hour
hmm.
ahead, which is so strange, and I don't know why they do that because just time zones in general are silly to me. But
Fair.
hold on,
But
maritime
I don't know, but
time zone.
like because I had somebody that was in this time zone that was like, "Oh, you're in Eastern Canada. Okay, cool. You're an hour ahead of me." And she was like, "No, I'm 2 hours
I'm
ahead of
actually
you
too.
because
Yeah,
yeah." It's like, dang it. Okay, I don't know. I call it the
it's
forgotten time zone because I always forget about it.
the
So
forgotten time zone. I think it's maritime.
probably that sounds about right.
Yeah,
But anyways, so okay, so you're in like above Vermont. Got it.
yeah.
Um,
So Eastern.
Yeah. And so when you were up in Canada, were you performing a lot or how did you kind of get introduced to like music and country music and all that stuff in general?
Well, country music was never really something I grew up with. I learned a lot of it after I moved here. So it's not, I didn't move here for the country music. I moved here for the songwriting aspect of it.
Hmm.
Um, when I was like 6 or 7 years old, my mom signed me up for voice lessons because she was like, "Oh, like I could tell you could carry a tune." My grandfather sang in the choir, my mom sang in the choir, so they were like, "Okay, you're the singer in the family now." Um, and so I did like some slow and steady voice training. Did a lot of musicals growing up, and the school talent shows, this and that. And it's in high school that I really figured that I wanted to take this seriously and really make a career out of it and focus on music because I was a high school athlete and I was good in school, but music was the thing that was like the most um like enigmatic to me because I could read a textbook and learn what I need to learn. I could like I played soccer my whole life, and that was something that I done for so long that I kind of like, I mastered it and I got as far as I could with it. And music was just like this thing that seemed like it had infinite amounts of things for me to learn about. And just the artistry of it all. Like I would take notes in class and also had a separate piece of paper and I would write a song. And so like through, band and taking part of the music program in high school, and then I continued studying music in college. That's when I really like started to like plant my feet firmly in that decision. When I was, I think 16 or 17 is when I first started recording music.
Mm.
And yeah, it was just me kind of like, I made a decision and I stuck with it.
Fair, fair,
Yeah.
fair. Just so you know, I'm not crazy. The Atlantic Standard Time Zone.
Atlantic. Okay.
Yes,
All
that
right.
she was from Prince Edward's Island.
Okay. So that's Atlantic. Okay. We call it the Maritimes in Canada.
Okay,
That's why.
okay, fair. I
Yeah.
just want. I was sitting here. I was like,
Atlantic,
I need her to
which
know.
it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
It makes sense. They're right there.
yeah. It's like I am not a crazy person. I
No, no, no,
promise.
no, no,
So,
no.
um, no. So I you kind of threw me off a little bit with the Luke Bryan comment because it made me
Oh,
completely forget that I was just like, oh, she's not a technically a country musician, and you
no.
threw out the Luke Bryan comment. I'm like, wait a minute, am I? Yeah. So I don't know
I will tell
that.
you one thing that make like I'm going to expose myself right now.
Mhm.
Before moving to Nashville, did not listen to country music. I mean, I grew up like knowing Shania Twain because she's our queen.
Yeah.
But like other than that, not really a thing for me. I actually didn't like it growing up. I grew up listening to like the angsty emo stuff
Hmm.
and some heavier music a little bit, but like um country music was not
Fair.
really something that I was particularly attracted to.
Hmm.
After, once you start playing Broadway, you definitely have to learn some country songs. It's
Yeah.
just not, it's something that you cannot get around. You just have to. And that's how I got familiar with, you know, all those artists, all their songs.
Fair.
I play venues that are name branded, so I have to learn these artists' songs.
Hmm.
It's it has changed my perspective on country music. Not that I thought I was like bad or anything. It just wasn't a sound that I enjoyed, but
Hmm.
it opened my eyes to just how diverse it was and how a lot of artists explore it differently.
Hmm.
When artists started mixing metal and country,
Hmm.
I was like, this is cool. I could get on
Right.
board with this.
Oh yeah.
Uh yeah, and just like solid songwriting. Like it's hit or miss in country music for me for right now, but artists like Lainey Wilson can write a country song because
Yeah.
it's her job and she knows how.
Hmm.
And yeah, like random artists I never even thought I would even gravitate towards that were just names that like, two like two first names as a whole name kind of thing. And
Hmm.
it's just
Right.
hard to follow. But I found some songs in that whole genre that I did appreciate. But for the
Nice.
most part, I am a pop rock metal kid.
Mm. Yep. I dig it because when I was listening to your music, I was like, okay, this is cool. It's something different in Nashville, which
Yeah.
like Nashville gets this stigma of being the country music capital, but then you don't
Mm-hmm.
realize like no, you go down to Nashville, you go over into East Nashville, and it's all rock bar. Like you go into like
Mm-hmm.
punk rock bars and stuff,
Yep.
and it's such a diverse musical community, but it just kind of gets pigeonholed because it's got
Yeah.
country radio seminar, it's got CMA Fest, it's got all these country things. But at the end of the day, it's where the music industry is for the most part. So
Exactly. It is Music City after all,
yeah.
but the fact that it has Nashville as a hub for country music, and honestly, most of it is geographic because
Mhm.
you have a lot of tours leaving from Nashville. We
Mhm.
have all of the infrastructure and the facilities and like the resources here. So it just makes sense for this to be like a country music city
Mhm. Yeah,
beyond
100%.
just being country music. Sorry, like beyond being Music City.
Right. And I feel like a lot of people associate like New York and LA with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like you hear the stories from like the 80s and 90s about all the rock bands that cut their teeth in New York and
Mm-hmm.
LA. And it's like, okay, cool. That's it. And Nashville's got its own thing. But now it's like, no, everything's kind of converging in on Nashville because
Mm-hmm.
LA's burning down and New York
Yeah.
smells like sewage. So sorry, I didn't mean to offend anybody, but
I haven't been to New York in a minute, but I could see it. Like I could visually see it.
yeah. Right. So where are you kind of at creatively right now? Like I know you released a song late last year, but where are you kind of at now?
So I released a song that I've worked on a little while ago, and finally was able to get it to where I wanted it to be and release it out in the world. I the follow-up single is not really a follow-up single, it's just a single. I decided once I started recording all like the stack of songs that I'm sitting on to not limit myself to just a specific genre. So like that last song is a little heavier than what I've been releasing in the past. This next song is a complete 180 back to my first record, which is like it's super poppy. It's got like pop rock, indie pop rock vibes. And like the song after that is gonna be back to like what the previous single, the most recent single is. So I'm just kind of like bouncing around and just letting each song be what it's meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I wrote it at the time, the sounds and the I guess the textures that I'm imagining in that moment, just letting that exist and not be like, well, like I am a pop rock artist, so it should definitely sound more like this. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to pigeonhole myself anymore. Kind of like I was talking about this with my producer actually. I was like, thanks for like not making me like this cookie cutter artist and like letting me like kind of like freaking jam through the dough with a freaking not even sharp enough knife. Like we're doing this super randomly and I'm enjoying it so much because like I'll go through phases when I listen to music. I love the Sabrina Carpenter record, but I also like cannot stop listening to Bad Omen's last record. And it's
Right.
just, that's kind of the headspace I'm in. And I want to embrace all those facets and like uh, all those parts of me that I don't want to like stuff away because
Yeah.
it's not appropriate or it's not on brand or whatever.
Right. 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 Would you say right now you're kind of, would it be fair to say that like right now you're kind of trying to figure out what kind of music you want to make, but also how far you can kind of stretch your own bounds?
I think experimenting and letting not letting a specific idea guide you because it's one thing to let it guide you and let it kind of turn into something great, but it's a fine line between that and it putting up parameters
Mm-hmm.
that could hinder you and become obstacles or hurdles in the end. So right now I just want to let the songs be what they need to be. I love being all cutesy and pop one moment, but I also on stage need to acknowledge that I'm not that. Like I can be a little more sultry and a little more cute, but I also love to stomp and like scream. So
Right.
like there can be a happy medium, but I'm just gonna let it be a spectrum rather
Mm-hmm.
than just kind of uh a very specific
Yeah.
space.
But I love the fact that you're allowing a spectrum to be there, but you're still it feels like you're still trying to figure out what that spectrum is. And
Mm.
like you're not like yes, you're influenced by all these things, but you've still got a parameters in which
Yeah.
you kind of want to keep yourself in.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say that I'm never going to have dobro or mandolin on a track, but like I
Right?
know that that's like those are sounds that I don't think work for my music.
Mm-hmm.
Uh yeah, just like I said, I write songs in their stories that are either like exaggerated moments in my life or just very specific moments in my
Mm-hmm.
life. But also like I see the colors that go around and the shapes that are kind of like in the background and the feelings in the moment. And I do want to I think production and sound design are supposed to enhance your story and what you're talking about in a song.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than being like, okay, let's do that, but make it pop, I'm just going to let it be its full freaky self.
Yeah. I feel that. I love it. I love it so much. So your current single out right now is Ghost Town.
Mhm.
Um, and you said you'd been working on this one a while, or?
I wrote it a few years back. I want to say it was right before COVID.
Mhm.
No, 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 no. That's not true. Oh my gosh, that is a complete lie. I wrote it right after COVID, and at first it was about how people are still trying to carry on through COVID,
Mhm.
and then over time it kind of became about carrying on despite feeling alone.
Mhm.
And that is a theme that I kind of encountered a lot, and probably will because it happens in my whole journey here in Nashville. I moved here not really knowing anybody and tried to navigate networks and hubs and cliques and try to find my space in it all. And a lot of times, I was alone. I didn't My whole family's back home. Like I said, I didn't have any friends really. I kind of made friends where I could, and a lot of times like people are trying to figure themselves out too, and so in that process people are either in a good mental state or not so great mental state. And I was lucky enough to be raised in a loving home and kind of
Mhm.
given all those resources and all that support. So I always had somebody to rely on, even though it was a phone call that I had to do. Like, I need to keep in mind they're an hour ahead of me.
Mhm.
uh just through it all, like I did find myself very alone at times because I didn't have like the friend group I have now, the bandmates I have now, the little team I built along the way. It's like a very, very, very slow work in progress because
Mhm.
your people aren't necessarily your people until you're like, wow, we've come this, we're X amount of years down the line and we're still here together. So
Mhm.
those are like themes that I definitely explore a lot in the songs that I'm going to be that I have released and will be releasing. So yeah, I wrote that right after COVID, and then I brought it to my producer Matt and went to LA a couple of years, no, a year and a half ago, and just showed some music to this one producer. He's like, I need to mix this song ASAP, like please, please, please.
Mhm.
And yeah, it kind of became that. We went to Joshua Tree to shoot some promo stuff, like the visuals for it. Me and my roommate, she's an incredible photographer. She does all my stuff now.
Nice.
And she's originally from LA, so she was able to kind of tell me where to go and like, oh, this is gonna be a good spot. We made like a really nice trip of it, and people asked me if the album cover was AI, and I was like, nah, dude. Like the main star there was the wind. Like that was
Mhm.
just like perfect timing on Tammy's end, and
Right.
the wind doing its magic.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, if if you notice that something's naturally happening and you've got a good photographer, that's just like
Mm-hmm.
you're always kind of I say rolling because I'm a videographer, and so it's just like
Yeah,
you always kind of want to be rolling.
yeah.
Whereas with the photos, if you're just like always ready, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you can catch the magic as it happens. So
And she's really good at that. Her and I work really well together, because like, and that was one thing that I struggled with too, was like finding a photographer I feel comfortable with, but
Mhm.
also feeling comfortable in front of the camera. And her and I just like clicked instantly the second we started living together. It was just something about her that just like I felt like she understood me,
Mhm.
and that ease is like so important for me because I get super awkward in front of a photo camera. Like I'm just like tense up like you would not believe.
I I feel you there. I feel you there. I
Yeah.
That's all I got for you on that one. It's
Yeah.
like I understand. I
Yeah.
understand the pain. Um, so kind of looking forward, you'd mentioned that you had like not a follow. You have another single kind of
Another single.
in the
Yeah.
works. Do you have you announced anything on that yet, or is it still
That
kind
I
of
have.
TBD?
So it's not TBD. I have a date for that, and I hold on. I am already forgetting what that date is, but it's coming out at the end of March, March 28th specifically.
Nice.
It's called No Good. So here's the scoop, guys. I haven't announced it on social media yet, but the song's called No Good. It's about uh, just the trouble you promise yourself to get into because you can and because you want to.
Fair.
Uh, I wrote that when I was working a factory job. This was like between touring while I was still in school. It was inspired by coming back to the idea of me uh, being like a huge geek. It was inspired by a line from Harry Potter.
Nice.
I solemnly swear that I'm up to no good, and that's the hook in the chorus. And I wrote that while I was just like lugging really heavy pieces of rubber in a tire factory, literally. Yeah. I still have the ticket that I pulled out of the little ticket machine, and I wrote the lyrics down on. I still have that somewhere handy, and it's a song that wasn't in the back of my mind for the longest time. I brought it to Matt, and we just kind of made it like it's fun little pop goodness. No, not Matt. Sorry, this is Bryant Lowry. He did a great job on it. I played him the song. He was like, "Yeah, I already know what to do with it." So
nice. I love it. Don't you love it when it kind of comes together like that, where you just like somebody automatically knows what the song needs?
And it's crazy because, and again, I was talking about this with Feather earlier. I really rely on just like gut feeling and just instincts. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they steer me in the right direction. I want to say like 99% of the time, like it's scary. And when I first wrote the song, my producer Matt is great with that kind of pop music, but for some reason something told me that I needed to bring it to Bryant, and I'm so glad I did, because he just like knocked it out of the park. Not to say that Matt wouldn't have done a great job, because he does every single time, but just, you know, vision wise and where I thought the song should end up, Bryant just like knocked it right out of the park. It was exactly everything I wanted it to be.
Nice. I love it. I'm excited to hear new music. You know, it's always fun, especially when, you know, like as I prepare for these interviews and I know there's more coming. And so it's like, okay, I can kind of gauge of what you are now, but that new music, that might be something that comes out of left field.
Exactly. It might steer me in a different direction. I might want to play a lot, write and record and play a lot more pop music. I do love really good, well produced, like fun, cute pop music. Like I love it. Like that Sabrina Carpenter record is incredible. And it's just that. It's just like very sweet pop music with like some tongue-in-cheek lyrics. And it's amazing. And I love that. And I do want to still take care of that creative side of me, be it like writing with other artists, for other pop artists, or even for myself, because like I could step into those shoes as well and put on that costume. I'm fine with it. But I want to still be able to cater to all facets. 100%. And like, who knows what that'll look like down the road. It might be like a separate project. It might be like, you know, a band for this project and the solo project on the side. I don't have enough music out to make a clear separation of the two. And not that I'm like even worried about that just yet, but I'm open to wherever it takes me.
Nice. I love it. You know, it's like I grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s. So like that pop world was like
so good.
It was good is not a word I will use to describe it, because as a teenage or as a 10-year-old boy, it wasn't something that I was into.
Okay.
We'll put it that way. Gotcha. But it has become very iconic. Like it's defined a generation. Like I get hit up by boy bands now to jump on the pod, like that were influenced by like NSYNC and all that stuff growing up. And it's just like, oh man, this pop life is
it's getting weird for sure. Yeah. Okay. It's getting weird for sure. But I don't think that weird is necessarily a bad thing though. I think the weirder the better. I was talking about this with my manager boss earlier. He said like, you know, Chapel Roan's doing something really cool right now. She's making pop weird again. And that's kind of where it needs to be right now, because everybody's doing the same thing over and over again. And I agree with him on that. I do. But yeah, just the unique, like the Cyndi Lauperness of it is really fun.
Like
So,
we need some Cyndi Lauper, some Madonna back in the day, you know,
hmm,
just like some of the
yes,
goofy weirdness where like even what oh, who was doing Lady Gaga?
dude,
Was it
that
her when she first came out where she
everybody was like, oh, she's strange. This is
yeah,
weird.
yeah,
And then like now everybody's saying that like her return with that new single Abracadabra. I love that song, by the way.
yeah.
Abracadabra is like the world needs it right now.
Right, right, right. Because I like when she first came around, there were so many people that didn't know who she was, what she was doing, because there was like, oh, she's doing weird things, she's doing
Yeah.
this, she's doing that. She was at like the Grammys or something dressed up as a dude or something, you know, and
Hmm.
just kind of like all these different things. And it's like, it's no different than what freaking Madonna was doing
Yeah.
back in the 80s. Like, yeah, so.
It's a lot of people playing safe, and the second you step out of that, but then people are curious and they look at it and they replicate it.
Mhm.
So, more power to her for thinking about it first, right?
Yeah.
And being
I
bold enough to do it.
right? And I'm kind of waiting for the next like big wave of that to come through.
Hmm.
So it'll be interesting
Yeah,
for
just
sure.
like because music's been great and there's a lot of good music that's come out in the last few years, but I haven't been excited
Hmm.
about music, like really like physically excited about music
Hmm.
in a while. I will say that Abracadabra definitely like did that for me though.
Hmm.
Just like the full out choreography, the drama of it all, the
Hmm.
vocal performance on it is incredible too. Like when she first started, I wasn't really expecting Lady Gaga to be that strong of a vocalist,
Hmm.
but man, oh man, like she's got more range than I thought she did. I thought she was just
Hmm.
purely an alto, like in a lower
Yeah.
female range. But then she goes way up high, and like I could tell that she worked a lot on her voice in the last few years too. And she's
Hmm.
definitely like, blooming. Even how long has it been? Like over 10 years into her career.
Well, I think it's been longer than that. I think it's
Was it like 2009 when she first came? 2008?
2008, probably. Yeah.
So we're coming up on 17 years of this
Yeah.
artist.
Because I was going to say, I want to say when she did A Star is Born, that's probably already 5 or 6 years old,
Oh,
maybe seven. Because let's see, heard about that when went to see The Mule, and The Mule came out. Sorry, my brain works very, very weirdly. Um,
parallels. It's totally fine.
right, and The Mule came out in 2018.
Oh, so it's been
Yeah,
like
so
seven
because
years.
like that was the first time that I really saw her like she wasn't relying on all the gimmicks and all the things. It was like her showing off like
Hmm.
real hardcore vocal performances. And obviously it's staged because it's a movie, but you know,
Yeah.
it's like
But she
that.
still had to stand in that vocal booth and produce it. So like there's still merit, like credit to be given there for
Mhm.
sure.
Oh yeah. But I love the world of pop music is so interesting because like we're sitting here talking about the weird side of pop music and it almost feels like sci-fi or fantasy like
Hmm.
and that stuff's really cool and really
Yeah.
interesting, but then you've also got like the complete opposite where right now like the very real pop music like pop music where it's like you got your like Teddy Swims where
Hmm.
it looks like he just came off a 8 week bender and he just gets up
Right.
there and sings his ass off, and it's like you got the really real side and then you've
Hmm.
got like this very made up fantasy side, and it's really cool that it's on the same spectrum
It
and it's
is, yeah.
but you know, so I don't know.
It's really fun to see kind of people play on their skills and really like exaggerate them
Hmm.
to a sense. Like Gaga's really cool, like good about like, the weird, the very like absurd stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have, like you said, Teddy Swims just has like pure raw vocal ability. And I'd be curious to look because I haven't really looked at a lyric sheet personally, but I'm sure it's not that many words. And
Hmm.
he just makes a freaking whole spectacle out of
Hmm.
the simplest or
Thanks.
like the shortest amount of words possible
Hmm.
and just turns it into this beautiful story and still gets the message across, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's really cool to see that. Another artist that I'm kind of starting to I don't know, dig a little bit deeper into is Benson Boone. I
Hmm.
wasn't very familiar with his story either. He did like American Idol, and like even there, he sounded exactly the same as he does now. And then released song after song, single after single. I think he dropped a few EPs, and like now, TikTok just gave him that huge
Yeah.
springboard he needed. It's wild. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. It's really because um I was making a TikTok one day, and I was just kind of I was doing one of those things where it's like, okay, it's going to be like one of those inspirational like speeches, or I'm going to get like a
Yeah.
song and just kind of overdub it on whatever I was doing. And hit one of like his big TikTok song kind of came up naturally, and I was just like, man, I wonder who this artist is. Like, I have no idea who he is, and so I just typed in like whatever lyrics I heard, and I was just like,
Mhm.
what song is this? And it's like, oh, this is so and so, and I'm like, oh, interesting, and like just kind of watching
Yeah,
his come up.
it seemed like he came out of nowhere for
Mhm.
real. And again, like it's just it seems like it's phases too. Like people
Mhm.
just latch onto a song that just kind of like explodes.
Yeah.
And
Didn't he do American Idol or something? Yeah.
yeah, he did that. He was so young too.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
Um, so outside of music, what do you like to get into? Like, are you working a full-time job right now, or what do you?
So like the stipulations that come with a work permit, the work permit that I have is that I could only be a performer. So I
Hmm.
could only either do like studio performance or stage performance for work. So that's kind of like what I am allowed to do here. So I live off of just playing music,
Nice.
playing shows, and I didn't even have the time to realize it at one point. And like I didn't like kind of similarly to this, I did an interview and that question came up and I was like, wait a minute. Like I play music for a living. It was just
Hmm.
wild to realize that. This is a couple of years ago, but like uh just recognizing the privilege I have to be doing this. There are its pressures too, because like, Nashville goes through its slow seasons, and when it's slow, the gigs aren't there. So you have to kind of gauge when it's when the getting's good, you have to work
You
really
really get
hard.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really get it. And then when it slows down, be prepared for that. That's that's work is music.
Hmm.
I step into the studio when I can. I'm working on this podcast project with Feather. I am in a D&D campaign right now. So I'm playing
Nice.
D&D with a few of my buddies and my boyfriend. We are about to go on an adventure and I'm very excited about it. I'm playing a little rabbit folk, so that's
Nice.
really cool. Aside from that, I really like I'm very much like an outdoors person. I love going on like trail walks with my dog. She's like I said earlier, just everything to me. She's been like my buddy since I moved here. So
Hmm.
definitely a very important part of my life. Um, and then I really just enjoy coffee, books,
Nice.
movies. That's kind of where I'm at. And oh my gosh, I forgot I completely glossed over this, but my major was going to be psychology. So that's
Mm.
another thing that I'm very interested in is just kind of reading up on like, newer studies and like some of the some of like the latest like news bits about that. I kind of go back and forth on whether or not I want to finish my degree,
Mm.
but honestly, music's taking up a lot of my time right now. I really want to focus on, I want to lock in a pub deal in the next year. That's kind of a goal for the next year.
Hmm.
I want to spend a lot more time in LA because I have management out there that's helping me out amazingly and a little team that I'm building out there as well. So I guess like, yeah, just a lot of it is focused around my little quiet life here, my music project, and my geeky side, really.
Okay. Okay.
And then eventually, I think the Sarcastic Four are going to get back together and
Nice.
record some more episodes
I love it.
leisurely.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's always the hard part about podcasting is it's like me, I do it I'm very rigid about my schedule. It's like every day, 9 a.m. episodes are going up. Like it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. But it's also I'm only relying on myself. Like, yes, I
Right.
have to get other musicians involved, but if like let's say you couldn't do it tonight, I've already got five on the back burner that like, okay, I'm covered. I
Right.
just need to make sure tomorrow I do too. And so figure out what that
Mm-hmm.
is. So it's just one of those things where it's like podcasting isn't easy. Everybody thinks it's like this easy thing to do. And it's like
Just a bunch of people hanging out and talking, but it's really not just that.
yeah. It's like it can be
Yeah.
100%, but you need somebody to be the point person to be like, okay, this is our podcast, but realize I'm doing a lot of the back end work because
You're
somebody
doing the
has to.
editing, you're uploading it,
Yeah.
you're making sure the artwork's there. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
So
that's kind of like for musicians too. Like when we released a single, we didn't just like go to the studio, drop vocals, and that's it. Like
yeah.
you have to make sure it's getting mixed and or the production is in the right place. It's getting mastered. That distribution's got it. They've got the artwork. They've got
Yeah.
all like the metadata. It's a lot to manage too. But
It's a whole thing, to say the least.
yeah.
So, but let's talk about the Dungeons and Dragons thing a little bit because I try when I lived out in New Mexico, I tried so hard to get into Dungeons and Dragons, but the people that I were playing with, I don't mean this in a mean way. None of them had jobs.
Okay.
So they wouldn't start playing until 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And they'd go till 5, 6, 7 in the morning,
Nope.
which doesn't work with my lifestyle when I have to be up at 7 a.m. to go to
Right.
work, you know?
Yeah.
And so one night I think it was like on a Saturday or something. And they're like, hey man, we're getting to start a new quest or whatever. If you want to jump in, now's the time to do it. Um, and this could take one night. This could be a one night thing. This could be like a couple of weeks. We just don't know. It's like, okay, let me jump in. And then we got to like hour 3, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, guys, it's like 1 a.m. and we've
I need
barely
to
even,
go.
yeah, it's like we've barely even started, it feels like. And they're like, yeah, like, I mean,
That's just how it goes.
that's how it is. And I'm like, all right. And so I looked at my buddy because he knew he was like, oh yeah, he's not going to stick around. I was like, hey man, I want to leave. So how do I
Like, do you kill my character off? Do I just
like
wander off?
like I want not I want to kind of make this interesting for the rest of y'all to have to deal with after I leave here. Right. It's like, okay, well then here's what you're gonna do. We're about to get ready to go into this battle thing. And I'm like, okay. So you're gonna set this spell and then kill yourself. It was like you couldn't be regenerated or something.
Yeah.
And then it was like you're going to do this one thing, you're going to make everybody pissed off or something, and then you're going to set the spell that you can't be regenerated and then kill yourself. So basically I just caused a bunch of chaos and then killed myself. And then he was like, that would be the best way for you to go out. I was like, I don't know what you just told me, but if it means I can leave within the next 20 minutes, I'm good. Like, I love y'all and y'all are the best, but I just spent 3 hours and we've literally done almost nothing. Like I need to call this one.
A lot of it is like just kind of, okay, I need to make sure that this next move I'm making is the right move. And then you consult with everybody, but then you're like, it's your turn.
Yeah.
So that adds time to the whole story and to the whole game. Like we had 2 sessions so far in this campaign, and we've made it from a ship to an island.
Yeah.
And had 1 battle.
Sweet.
and then one bar brawl that I caused because I'm that character.
Nice.
But yeah, like in the grand scheme of things and the amount of hours we put into it, it's not much, but we got a lot accomplished. And we have like, I have like a notebook full of, because it's a lot to keep track of because we're doing a bigger campaign.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to keep track of. But, uh, I can't even tell you because the dungeon master is the one who knows like where we're headed and how long it's probably going to take us. And I'm kind of at the mercy of like where he decides we go.
Yeah.
Or like what he decides the results of our decisions are. So I'm enjoying the process, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm doing it. And it's not, we're all musicians too. Like the four of us playing we all have, jobs on Broadway, playing for artists and all that stuff. So we get together whenever we can. And this campaign started, I want to say in December, and we've only had 3 sessions so far. And that's because like one of them just got married. I went to Canada for a whole month, and just a lot of like life stuff and work, but I'm enjoying it. And we have fun creating characters, and he's been really, like, the dungeon master's been really good with coming up with a really fun story and a cool campaign and some cool quests as well. So
nice.
I'm enjoying it.
I love it. So before we wrap this up, how was it, the trip back home?
The trip back home was good. I have a niece and a nephew back home. So and they're really young. So just spending time with them and just watching them become people and growing up and learning all these random things that you learn when you're 3 and 4 years old is incredible. And the fact that I'm an aunt and not a mom is really great too, because then I get to go home and they're my sister's problem. Right. But no, they're incredible. I love my family. I'm like I said, we were all raised really like we're very tight. We're very all very close. And I was raised like just alongside every single one of them. And they've always been my greatest supporters and so encouraging and everything, honestly. So just having that, being home and having that part of me back, it sounds weird to explain, because like once you remove yourself from home and you're out like around a bunch of strangers and like someplace that's not familiar to you, and then coming back home and then kind of getting reacquainted with yourself I need that like regularly, because I'm just around all sorts of craziness sometimes, and I face situations that like people react differently to, and I'm just like, why am I like this? And then I go home and I'm like, and I talk about it with my family, and they're like, it's because this, and I'm like, okay, makes sense now, cool. Right. So just getting back in touch with as cheesy as it sounds, back in touch with my roots is just so important. And just being, like I said, my parents are a little older now. Winters are rough in Canada sometimes. So I'm like the little boy they never had. So just being around and being able to help them around the house, shoveling we got so much snow last 2 weeks ago. So just being around to help them with that, and just not them being alone to break their backs out there is just, I'm happy to do that for them.
Fair. I love it. It's great. I'm an uncle, not a father. So I love that. It's actually quite funny because I think my sister is gaslighting me that my niece actually likes me. Because, so little side story, and I've told my sister this, so she's not going to get mad at all. It's like, my sister gets her daughter so excited to see me. Like it's almost to the point where it's like, when's Uncle Tommy coming to town? When's Uncle, like that situation. And then I walk into the house and doesn't come anywhere near me. Like sits, if I'm sitting on like, let's say I'm sitting here on the couch, she sits here, won't come anywhere near me. And it's like,
how old is she?
She's about to turn 3.
Okay.
So it's like, where's this disconnect? Is it she likes the idea of Uncle Tommy coming to town, and then when he actually does?
I have that happen with my niece sometimes. Like when I first come back home, she's shy with me.
Yeah.
But then like, so I spend like longer periods at home, and now she's starting, she's also 3, she's 3.5. And so like once I see her, the first visit she's shy and it takes her a while to open up. And then like she won't hug, or like either she won't hug me or she'll like look away. But then like I'm back the next day and she's like, you're here.
Fair.
So
Fair. Yeah. The last time I saw her, which was Christmas, I got her to hand me a piece of trash. That was about it. That was the victory.
Something. That's something.
It was like she'd stepped on something and she was like, "What is this?" And she picked it up and it was like the Christmas ornament hook.
Oh yeah.
She was like, she had it in her hand and I was just like, held my hand out and she gave it to me and I'm like, well, I mean, she didn't run away and tear.
Yeah, some kind of contact.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's funny though. I teased my sister about that. I was like, I feel like you're gaslighting me at this point. So, yeah. But anyways.
Kids do silly things and it's just like hard to understand sometimes. They don't even understand their own emotions. So
right, 100%. Yeah. So if anybody wants to check out your music, all that fun stuff, where's the best place to find you?
So I have a website, www.lizlabellemusic.com, and then just type my name in whatever streaming platform you're using, Liz LaBelle. You'll find Ghost Town, which is my latest single, and No Good is coming out March 28th. So be on the lookout for that.
I'm excited. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm pumped.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you everybody
so much. It was so nice talking to you, just like shooting the shit. I had no idea where we're going with this. And I'm like, this was so fun.
Yeah, this is like the podcast that I like to have because it's like, sometimes it's really hard to get answers out of people to be like, I ask them a question and it's like, yeah, I did this thing. And it's like, okay.
Just like answers very briefly and doesn't really elaborate, or
yeah, pretty much. It's like
I babble, so you're lucky.
Well, no, the difference is you gave me stuff to feed off of. It's like, oh, we're talking about this thing, so let's dive into it. So it's not hard.
I could talk for hours. Yeah.
Well, maybe you need to start your own podcast.
I don't know if the world needs it, honestly. We'll see. Maybe. Might be a future project.
Fair. But once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will catch you all later. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Live and Amplified's Indie Fusion podcast. If you'd like to support anything Live and Amplified does, please follow us on all of our social media platforms at Live, the letter N, Amplified. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, any of them, all of them, at Live, the letter N, Amplified. And if you would like to buy any official Live and Amplified merch, you can do so at our merch shop, link in the description below. Once again, thank you all. Have a great day.